"Yes, Mr. President," I said. We hung up, and I began walking back toward the diner, security agents in tow. Don't overshoot, don't undershoot. Looking up to the cloudless sky, I found myself wondering something more fundamental. Where the hell is the runway? I had spent decades thinking about moments such as this, critical junctures in American foreign policy where lives were at stake. Studying the manual, however, is not the same as flying. In 2002, I had published my first book, A Problem from Hell, America and the Age of Genocide. In the book, I criticized U.S. officials for doing too little to stop the major genocides of the 20th century. Now I found myself in the president's cabinet as the Syrian regime was murdering hundreds of thousands of its own people. What would the old Samantha Power say to the current Samantha Power? Reporters often asked. How does the author of a book on atrocities defend the U.S. government's inaction in the face of mass murder in Syria? My standard answer rejected the implication that my past and present selves were in conflict. The old and new Samantha know each other quite well, I would reply. They talk all the time, and they agree. The full answer, of course, was more complicated. I had gone from being an outsider to an insider, from being a critic of American foreign policy to a leading representative of the United States on the world stage. From within government, I was able to help spur actions that improved people's lives. And yet, we were failing to stop the carnage in Syria. I was at risk of falling prey to the same mode of rationalization I had assailed as an activist. In January of 2017, I concluded 8 years in the Obama administration and became an outsider once more. As I tried to get my bearings, President Obama's successor began to turn the country in a radically different direction. Like many Americans, I vacillated between feelings of disbelief, outrage, and anxiety about the future. I had long taken for granted the importance of individual dignity, the richness of American diversity, and the practical necessity of global cooperation. Yet suddenly, these core values were under assault and far more vulnerable than I had recognized. I set out to write a book that explored what I had learned thus far in my life and career. I returned to my early childhood in Ireland, the circumstances that brought me to the United States, my high school years in Atlanta, Georgia, and my time as a journalist in Bosnia. I delved into experiences that had moved and even altered me as a human rights advocate, on a presidential campaign, in the White House, and at the UN. And I examined painful losses and setbacks, both in my private life and in the public glare. We make sense of our lives through stories. Regardless of our different backgrounds and perspectives, stories have the power to bind us. In my Irish family, being able to tell a lively story has always been a means of fitting in and drawing people together. As a war correspondent, storytelling was the most effective tool I had to bridge the vast space between those suffering the wounds of distant conflict and my American readers. As a diplomat, when foreign officials refused to budge in negotiations, I would try to shake up stale debates by sharing authentic first-hand stories about the many people who were being affected, for good and bad, by our decisions. And as a woman in national security and the mother of 2 young children, I used stories to make bearable the tensions inherent in balancing a demanding career and a fulfilling family life. This story is one of sorrow, resilience, anger, solidarity, determination, and laughter, sometimes jumbled together. This is also a story of idealism, where it comes from, how it gets challenged, and why it must endure. Some may interpret this book's title as suggesting that I began with lofty dreams about how one person could make a difference, only to be educated by the brutish forces that I encountered. That is not the story that follows. Part 1, Chapter 1.